Hi, this is Congressman Tom Cole, 4th District of Oklahoma, and this is the initial one of our congressional chats for 2025, coming appropriately in the first really active week in Congress. The House considered two pieces of legislation this week. These were pieces of legislation that honestly the Senate wouldn't deal with last year. We have a different Senate, a Republican Senate. We have a different president coming in, obviously, with President Trump. So these are things that we think now can move that we couldn't move before. The first one is the so-called Laken-Riley Act. This is, I know all of our listeners will be familiar with the brutal murder of Laken Riley in Georgia by an illegal immigrant with a criminal background. This is legislation that would strengthen the ability of law enforcement to find, prosecute, and if necessary, either imprison or force out of the country, return to their country of origin, people with serious criminal backgrounds. It ought to be a no-brainer. It got every single Republican vote. This year, post-election, we got dozens of Democratic votes in addition to that. So I think everybody is beginning to understand how dangerous our southern border is, something that President Trump has focused on, President-elect Trump has focused on both as president and as a candidate. So I'm glad to see Congress getting the message and stepping up here. The second piece of legislation was about the International Criminal Court. This is a very left-leaning body that the United States is not a party to the agreement that created it. It's an effort to, through an international agency, exercise judicial authority. One of the more outrageous things it did recently was declare the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, as a war criminal on the basis of his actions defending Israel after it was brutally attacked on October 7th of 2 years ago. We don't recognize that, and the legislation makes that clear, prohibits any jurisdiction for the International Criminal Court in the United States, make sure that they're sanctioned for what they've done, and make sure that we don't fund this court in any way through appropriations. I think those are all perfectly in order. And again, this is something that's passing with significant Democratic support. So this is not Congress acting in a partisan way. It's actually Congress voicing its bipartisan majority opinion that number one, our southern border needs to be secure, and number two, we recognize the legitimate right of Israel to defend itself after an attack. So I think those are important things. I think they'll be taken up in short order by the United States Senate. Now it's under Republican control. I actually had the opportunity to talk to my good friend and colleague, James Lankford, this morning. We had a delegation breakfast, and he made the point he thought both of these things now in a Republican majority Senate could pass. So we're hopeful that they will. Another major activity for Congress this week has been organizing itself. Each new Congress, and we're totally new in the House, 2/3 of the Senate carry over, so it's a little bit different and easier there, but we have to reconstitute every one of our committees. And obviously as members leave, other members come in, members sometimes want to change committees, or like on my committee, which is a large committee, the Appropriations Committee, which I chair, people will move from different subcommittees. A lot of people always want to be on defense. It's a very sought after position because half of the money we appropriate on the Appropriations Committee basically is for defense. But there's other desirable committees as well, and members like to move to different ones over time as they gather a little seniority, and so we work on trying to get every member a good assignment. As chairman, I make those decisions as to who goes on what subcommittees that I have authority over as the chairman. So we worked this week. We'll announce those next week, and hope we've made good decisions and slotted people in the appropriate places that'll work hard for the American people. I certainly feel very blessed to work with the members I work with on appropriation. Excellent committee. It's one of the most exclusive committees in Congress. Members work very hard to get onto that committee. As a result, the ones that are on there take it very seriously and do a good job. We have 5 new members on the Republican side. I think the Democrats actually have 6 or 7. We have more seats, but they had retirements and changes. So anyway, we need to get that worked out, and so the committee can get down to work. That's been underway, not just on my committee, but every single committee in Congress. And it takes a little while, but we'll have that done, certainly for the Appropriations Committee by next week. Last thing I would say is actually all of Washington, I think all of America, was moved by the loss of President Carter. He laid in state. I and several members of my staff went by to certainly pay our respects in the rotunda of the Capitol to the former president, longest living president in American history, 100 years, pretty amazing. In full disclosure, obviously I'm a Republican. President Carter was a dedicated Democrat, and let's just say politically we did not see eye to eye. I actually got very politically active, in part because of disagreements with the Carter administration, everything from how we handled the Russians in Afghanistan to oil and gas price controls and windfall profit tax. And so we had a whole range of disagreement. That doesn't take away from the fact that he was a devout Christian, wonderful father and husband and family man, a thoroughly decent human being, and an honorable person. So I never let our differences, and President Carter also, I should say, was a Naval Academy grad and served the country with distinction in uniform. So he had an amazing life, an amazing career. We just didn't agree politically, and nothing's going to change that. But I think when somebody leads a life of service, and President Carter certainly did, he deserves the thanks of all Americans and the appreciation of all Americans. And whether you agreed with him politically or not, you had to admire the character of the man and the fact that he was willing to sacrifice for the country, both in uniform and in elective office. So I wish the Carter family well. I know this is a very difficult time for them. We all know this comes in our lives. I've watched some of the touching ceremonies in Georgia and other places, and listened to the reminiscence of his friends and neighbors. And something admirable about a person that's president of the United States, and after they lose, goes home, goes back to a very small town in Georgia that he clearly loved and cherished, and devoted his life to doing things that were worthy, like Habitat for Humanity. And again, it's there's a lot to be proud of there. So again, I certainly hope all Americans respect the man, whether they agree with the politics, and that's a better thing for the country, and that's the appropriate way to proceed. So I wish you and your family well. There's going to be a lot of activity in the weeks ahead. We're pretty excited with the coming inauguration of President Trump on January 20th. I'm going to have the opportunity actually this weekend to visit with him in Mar-a-Lago. He's bringing the entire Republican conference down, different groups on different nights, so it's really artfully done. The Freedom Caucus one night, the chairman of the various committees, I'm going there in that capacity the next night, and some of our more moderate groups like Main Street Partnership and what have you the night after that. I think it's an effort by President Trump to reach out, build lines of communication, exchange ideas, tell us what his vision is, the order he'd like to get things done in. Let us give him the advice we support. But I think President Trump is doing a wonderful job unifying the Republicans. He had a good visit with the Senate this week. Actually, Senator Langford told me a little bit about that this morning at our breakfast meeting. So again, I think things are moving in the right direction, but I have no doubt it'll get contentious and bumpy here in the months ahead. But Congress has a lot to do. We have to make sure the Trump tax cuts are saved. We have to get our appropriations bills done, and frankly, we have to relook at everything from our trading system to our rules and regulations. The last 4 years, in my view, have been difficult years for the country. And I think the scope of President Trump's victory, the fact that he's the first Republican presidential candidate to win the popular vote in 20 years, and he won with the largest electoral vote of any Republican president since 1988, so literally in 37 years. That suggests he has a mandate, and this Congress should be working with him and not against him. That's certainly what I intend to do, and try and help him accomplish his main objectives for the country. So good luck in the weeks ahead. God bless you and your family. I look forward to visiting with you again.